I made him the man of his dreams, picked him up from scratch, helped him become confident, successful, attractive. He wore expensive suits, said the right words, knew how to impress. But as soon as he rose to the top, I became superfluous to him. If you don't like it, find someone else. That's all he said before he walked out of my life. But you know what the best part is? When he finally realized who he had lost, I was already looking ahead. My name is Lily, and here is my story. I remember the first time I saw him. It was 3 years ago in one of the cozy cafeterias on the outskirts of the city. Rain was lazily dripping down the huge panoramic windows, and I, wrapped in a beige cashmere sweater, was leisurely drinking a cappuccino. He was sitting at the next table, thin, with carelessly disheveled dark hair and a pensive look. I knew right away that he was the kind of guy who wasn't used to the good life. Plain clothes, a worn jacket, and a look of weariness in his eyes. "Excuse me, do you have $1?" His voice suddenly sounded. I looked up. He was smiling embarrassedly, holding an empty wallet. "Sure," I replied, pulling not $1, but $10 out of my wallet. "You can get yourself a coffee and something to go with it." He looked like his pride had just been trampled, but he accepted the money. I watched as he ordered himself the cheapest drink, then looked at me hesitantly. "Thank you. My name is Justin." That's how it all started. We talked for a long time that night. Justin told me that he had recently moved to the city, was working as a waiter but dreamed of more. He was 5 years younger than me, 29 versus my 34. I wasn't embarrassed by that. There was something appealing about him. Sincerity, ambition, a hunger for something more. From then on, we started seeing each other more often. I took him to good restaurants, introduced him to interesting people, helped him with his work. I had my own business, a small but profitable network of beauty salons, so money was never a problem. For him, even the opportunity to have dinner in a normal place was something special. I watched him gradually change. At first he was shy and insecure, but over time he began to speak more confidently, to watch his style, to be interested in expensive things. I didn't pay attention to it. I felt like I was helping him become a better version of himself. But as it turned out, I was just creating a monster. At first, everything was perfect. Justin seemed grateful for everything I did for him. He was attentive, caring, and even when we fought, he was always the first to reconcile. I felt alive around him, as if his energy, his lust for life, was transmitted to me. I helped him to find a job in one of the big companies, not immediately in a top position, of course, but much better than moonlighting as a waiter for pennies. He settled in quickly and soon started earning decent money. We began to travel more often, to visit expensive places, and I was proud that I was next to him in his formation. But then he started to change. At first, it was little things. He started staying longer at work, and when he came home, he could sit on his phone for hours. He used to tell me everything, but now his answers were getting shorter and shorter. "How was your day?" "It was okay." "What's new?" "Nothing." When I asked what was wrong, he just shrugged and said, "Tired." It took me a while to realize it wasn't fatigue. His closet had changed. Expensive suits, stylish accessories, expensive watches. If I used to take him shopping and pick out clothes myself, now he started buying everything himself. His taste changed. He chose things with expensive labels, sometimes even more expensive than I wore. But most importantly, his behavior changed. If before he looked at me with admiration, now his gaze was different. Evaluating. As if I wasn't the woman he loved, but something familiar, ordinary. And then one day, when we were at a restaurant, I felt for the first time that I'd lost him. We were having dinner at an expensive place downtown. Justin was sitting across from me, in his new dark blue suit, looking at his phone. I was telling him something about my day, but he wasn't listening. "Justin, can you even hear me?" He looked up slowly. "What?" "Yeah, sure, go ahead." But I didn't want to go on anymore. I looked at him and realized that he was a different person. Not the humble guy I'd met 3 years ago, but someone new. Cold. Aloof. And the worst part was, he liked it. After that dinner, I started to notice things I'd tried to ignore before. Justin had changed not only in appearance, but also in his attitude toward me. He didn't ask me how my day was going. He wasn't interested in what I was doing. Before, he tried to spend time with me, but now he went to work early and came back late. I felt an invisible wall growing between us, but I tried not to dwell on it. Everyone goes through rough patches, I told myself. But this rough patch didn't end. One night, as I sat in my bedroom with my laptop, Justin came into the room, typing something into his phone. He didn't even look at me, just threw his jacket on a chair and sat on the bed. "Working again?" he said, taking his eyes off the screen. "Yeah, I have an important meeting tomorrow." He nodded and stared at his phone again. I looked at him. Justin had always been handsome, but now he looked even better. Confidence, expensive clothes, well-groomed appearance. Once it had all been for me. Now it seemed like he was doing it for someone else. "You've been a little distant lately," I said cautiously. He grinned, but didn't take his eyes off the screen. "Are you starting again?" "I'm not starting. I just feel like something's different." "Nothing's changed, Lily. I just have different priorities right now." I froze. Different priorities. "What are they?" I asked. Justin sighed heavily and finally put the phone away. "Work, development. I don't want to be stuck at one point. That's what you wanted, right? For me to grow up?" "Yeah, but I didn't think you'd forget about me in the process," he snorted. "Stop being so dramatic." Those words hit harder than I expected. He used to appreciate me. Now I felt like I'd become something he took for granted. A few weeks later, I finally realized it wasn't just work. My friend Kate and I went to a bar after work, just to relax, and just as I was about to leave, Kate grabbed my arm. "Lily, don't be nervous," she said quietly, looking away. I followed her gaze, and my heart sank. Justin. He was sitting at the far table. There was a girl with him, a young girl in her early 20s, long-haired, fragile, laughing at his every word. He looked at her the way he had once looked at me. I don't remember running out of the bar. I only remember that in that moment, my love for him cracked for the first time. I was up all night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what to do. I had 1,000 questions running through my head. Maybe this was just a business meeting. Maybe I had it all wrong. But I saw the way he was looking at her. That's not how you look at business associates. In the morning, when Justin got home, I was already waiting for him in the living room. "Hi." He tossed his keys on the front table like nothing had happened. "Where have you been?" He raised an eyebrow in surprise. "At a meeting." "At the bar?" He froze for a second, then hummed. "Someone told you?" "I saw you myself." Justin sighed, closing his eyes and rubbing the bridge of his nose as if I was boring him with my mere presence. "Lily, why are you causing drama? I was there with a coworker. It doesn't mean anything." "A coworker?" I crossed my arms over my chest. "You looked at her the way you once looked at me." He looked at me, and there was irritation in his gaze. "You're imagining things." "No, Justin, you're the one who's changed." He stepped closer, resting his arms on the back of the couch. "Lily, I'm changing because I'm moving forward. Because I want to live my life differently. Isn't that what you wanted?" I swallowed. "I wanted you to become more successful, but I didn't want you to become a stranger." Justin shook his head and turned around abruptly. I have to go to the office. Let's discuss this later. No, let's discuss it now. He stopped and looked at me. Okay, if you don't like something, you know where the door is. I felt something shatter inside. He didn't care. I'd invested so much in him, time, money, feelings, and now he was just giving me an ultimatum. If you don't like it, leave. So that's it? My voice shook, but I didn't let the tears come. Yes, Lily, that's exactly right. I watched as he took his jacket, slipped it over his shoulders, and walked out of the apartment without even turning around. And I was left standing in the empty room, not knowing what to do next. After that conversation, I didn't see Justin for 3 days. He hadn't called or written, and I wasn't about to make the first move either. Two feelings were fighting inside me, pain and pride. I loved him, but I realized that he was no longer the man I had once fallen in love with. On the third day, he came back. I was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee when I heard the front door open. Justin walked in, threw his keys on the nightstand, and didn't even bother to say hello. Where have you been? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Working, he said briefly, walking into the bedroom, and probably working with that girl from the bar again. He stopped and looked at me with irritation. Jesus, Lily, are we going to be discussing this much longer? Until you tell me the truth. He grinned, shook his head, and strode into the bedroom as if my question didn't even deserve an answer. I wasn't going to leave it at that. Are you cheating on me? I asked, following him. He threw his jacket on the bed without looking at me. No. But you don't care about me. He turned around sharply. I do care, it's just that you've gotten too clingy. I clenched my fists. I'm obsessive because I'm trying to save our relationship. And I don't want to keep it that way, he said coldly. I froze. Like what? He ran his hand through his hair as if trying to find the words. Boring, Lily. Everything's become routine. We do the same things. You control everything, decide everything for me. I'm sick of it. So you're sick of me helping you with everything? That was before. Now I can take care of myself. I looked at him and realized he wasn't afraid of losing me anymore. And now what? My voice was almost a whisper. Justin shrugged his shoulders. I'm just saying that if you don't like the way things have become, you can leave. It wasn't the first time he'd said that, but now I suddenly realized that's what he really wanted. He used to need me. Now I was something old, something he didn't need, something to get rid of. I wanted to scream, to accuse him of betrayal, to remind him of who he was when we met. But I knew it wouldn't change anything. He'd already made his choice. I just wasn't a part of that choice. After the last dialogue, I didn't cry. It was empty inside, as if all my feelings had frozen at once. I wasn't going to make a scene, beg him to stay, or prove that I was important. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let him trample me. The next day, I packed his things. It was a strange feeling, like I was packing a suitcase not for the man I lived with for 3 years, but for a stranger. Part of me hoped he'd realize he'd gone too far, that he'd stop me, but he wasn't even surprised. Really? Justin grinned, standing in the bedroom doorway. Yes. I'm tired, Justin. Tired of fighting for us alone. He crossed his arms over his chest, studying me. Do you really think you can do this without me? I felt my insides boil. You're the one who could do it without me. So I don't see why I can't do it. Justin grinned, but something akin to irritation flickered in his gaze. He clearly hadn't expected me to make that move first. All right, he picked up the suitcase. Good luck then. He turned and walked out of the apartment without even saying goodbye. I stood in the middle of the room and watched the door close behind him. Was that it? Just like that? I thought I was going to feel worse. I thought I'd sob at night and feel sorry for myself, but instead I felt strangely relieved. Yes, I was in pain, but I knew that now I had a chance to find myself again. The man I loved no longer existed, and the man who walked out of my apartment I no longer needed. The apartment had been unusually quiet after Justin left. There was no sound of his footsteps, no sound of his voice, no sound of his endless messages typed while he sat on the couch. But the strangest thing was that I wasn't in as much pain as I'd expected. Yes, there was devastation inside, but with it came relief. It was like I'd finally shed the weight I'd been carrying around for too long. I spent the first week after the breakup all alone. I turned off my phone, didn't answer my friends' messages, just sorted myself out. But then one night, I got a call from Kate. "Lily, you can't just lock yourself away like this. Let's get together." I wanted to say no, but then I realized that if I didn't start getting back to life, I'd be stuck in this state forever. We met at a small bar downtown. "You look good," Kate said, looking me over carefully. I smiled. Was I supposed to show up in a stretched-out sweater and puffy eyes? Well, considering you broke up with Justin, yeah. I just shrugged. I guess I'd just been preparing for this for too long. Kate nodded, sipping her cocktail. "He hasn't texted you?" "No." "And you're not going to write to him?" I shook my head. "I don't see the point. I gave him everything and he chose something else. If he needed to, he'd try to get me back." Kate looked at me with approval. "You're stronger than you think." I was about to reply something light, but suddenly I heard a familiar voice. "No, seriously, you're really pretty. Why don't we drink something else?" I slowly turned my head and froze. Justin. He was standing at the bar, leaning over to some girl. Young, spectacular, the kind he now seemed to surround himself with. My heart skipped a beat. He hadn't even managed to disappear from my life yet, but he was already looking for a new replacement. Kate saw him too. "Lily." "It's okay," I said quickly, but nothing was really okay. I looked at him and realized this man was the one I'd once loved, the one I'd supported, inspired, lifted out of poverty. And now he was acting like I was never in his life, and that hurt the most. I sat there clutching my cocktail glass, staring at him. Justin leaned toward the girl, whispering something in her ear, and she laughed, flirtatiously fixing her hair. Everything inside me clenched. Not jealousy, no, it was something else. I realized how easily he'd replaced me, how easily he'd cut me out of his life. "Lily," Kate touched my arm gently. "Let's get out of here." I inhaled sharply, averting my gaze. "No." "Are you sure?" I turned to her slowly and nodded. "Yes, I'm not going to hide." I took a sip of my cocktail, trying to keep my balance, and then Justin noticed me. His face froze for a second. His gaze met mine, and I saw in it not guilt, not regret, just surprise, like I was some reminder from a past he hadn't expected to encounter. He straightened slowly, took his hand off the girl's shoulder, and walked toward me. "Lily," he said quietly, stopping at our table. "Justin," I answered just as calmly. He looked me over as if assessing my condition. "I didn't expect to see you here." "And I didn't expect to see you with a new toy so soon." He grinned. I didn't have to sit around and suffer. I clenched my fingers around the glass. "Yeah, you clearly weren't suffering." Justin hummed and looked down at me a little, like he was trying to show me that he was different now, above this conversation. "Lily, we both knew this was going to end." I blinked. "Really? and you seem to have forgotten how you once begged me to give you a chance." I saw his jaw clench a little, but he quickly put an indifferent expression back on his face. "People change." "Yes, Justin, people change. Just not everyone turns into ungrateful, selfish people." This time, he couldn't hide his irritation. "Look," he leaned a little closer, "if you think I'm sorry, I'm not. I'm just living my life. You can do the same." I looked at him carefully, realizing that this conversation was the last one, and that the Justin standing in front of me wasn't the same Justin I'd once loved. That guy was gone. I sipped my cocktail slowly, not taking my eyes off him. "And you know what? That's exactly what I'm doing." I picked up my purse, looked at Kate, and smiled. "Let's find a place where there are no ghosts of the past." Kate smiled and got up from the table. I didn't even turn around as I left the bar. Justin no longer existed in my life. After that meeting in the bar, I had finally decided that there was no point in going back to the past. Justin had chosen his path, and now I was choosing mine. The first few weeks were weird. I thought he was about to write, call, try to say something, but he didn't, and that made it even easier. I was completely focused on myself. I went back into business, started working out, went out with friends more often. I did things I didn't have time to do before because all my energy went into maintaining a relationship that, as it turned out, was all about me. And you know what? I felt good. And then something happened that I didn't expect. One evening, as I was walking home from a client meeting, my phone vibrated in my bag. The number was familiar. "Justin." I stopped in the middle of the street. I just stared at the screen for a few seconds, then hit answer. "Hello?" "Lily." "Hi." His voice sounded so normal, like we hadn't talked in a couple days, not months. "Hi," I replied discreetly. Pause. "How are you?" I grinned. "I'm great." "That's good to hear." Another pause, like he didn't know what to say next. "Did you want something specific?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Justin sighed. "I was thinking, why don't we get together, have some coffee, talk?" I felt my insides turn upside down. "About what?" He hesitated. I was wrong. I closed my eyes, that's it. He understood, but too late. I exhaled and smiled. "Justin, I'm glad you realized it. I really am. So, should we get together?" No." He stopped talking. "Why not?" I looked out at the evening city, at the lights, at the people going about their business. "Because I don't need you to realize anything anymore." There was silence on the other end of the line. Lily. "Goodbye, Justin." I dropped the call, stowed my phone in my bag, and continued walking forward. I didn't expect him to come back anymore, because I wasn't looking back myself anymore. After that call, I thought he'd try again. Text, call, try to meet. But nothing happened, and frankly, I didn't care. I wasn't waiting for his words anymore. I wasn't replaying the past in my head or looking for answers to questions that no longer mattered. I just lived. A few months passed, I changed my style, got a new haircut, started traveling more often. Now all my energies were spent not on saving other people's dreams, but on building my life. And then I saw him again. It happened by chance, in a cafe on the corner where I went for a coffee. Justin was sitting at a table by the window, alone. He'd changed. He was still stylish and well-groomed, but he didn't have the same confidence in his gaze. He noticed me and froze. I smiled genuinely, calmly. He didn't expect it. I went to the counter, ordered a coffee, and walked out of the cafe without turning around. I didn't expect him to understand anything important anymore, because I didn't need it anymore. A lesson I've learned. Sometimes you give a person everything: time, love, support, faith in them. You lift him up from his knees, heal his wounds, inspire him to dream. And then he leaves, not because you're worse, but because he's different. Became who he wanted to be, but he forgot who got him there in the first place. I blamed myself for a long time. I thought maybe I was too caring, too obsessive, too strong, but now I realize I didn't lose, I was free. Free from a man who didn't know how to appreciate. The pain is gone. I'm left stronger, wiser, calmer. And if you're reading this now, in a similar position, know this. Love is not self-sacrifice. True love doesn't make you less. It opens you up. And if you're around someone who takes advantage of your kindness but doesn't see you as valuable, maybe it's time for you to be your own person. You don't have to save those who are drowning if they are pulling you down in the process. Sometimes the surest path is the path away from someone, to finally choose yourself.